And finally, we end tonight with an interview with George Proakis, Director of Planning for the City of Somerville. Somerville Neighborhood News invited him to the studio and spoke about the new zoning ordinance that will be considered by the Board of Aldermen and by you, the Somerville residents, this year.
George Proakis, Director of Planning for the City of Somerville, thank you so much for coming down to SCAT TV today. I wanted to learn a little bit about the new zoning ordinance that's being prepared. I think it's been in the works for about 5 years. It's a lot of pages, but I thought maybe you could give us a little introduction to this whole new set of rules. What does it mean, and what are the highlights?
Sure. We are very excited about the opportunity after 5 years of work to take the next step in implementing our citywide planning goals. One of the things our Summer Vision Comprehensive Plan called out when it was completed in 2012 was the importance of finishing a process of overhauling the citywide zoning ordinance, the rules that spell what you can do in terms of uses and buildings on lots across the city. The ordinance that we have today is based upon a map that was completed in 1926 and an ordinance that was last really updated in 1990. So it's a real opportunity to create a good strategy for customer service, to be able to say it's fair for this community, for someone coming in to develop, for a homeowner, for a neighbor where a project is going on, to all understand what the rules of the road are for being able to do this stuff, and having all of that together in one place, organized in a way that's more readable and more understandable. So we're working to do all of that. What are the top big changes that you, as a Director of Planning, think are in the works and that are good for the city? I think for a person who's living in a lot of Somerville, in a typical Somerville neighborhood, a 2 or 3 family house, I mean, the most significant thing is that we're making it easier for them if they want to make a small addition or something to grow on their house, like adding a dormer for an extra bedroom or a bathroom, or putting a small rear addition on a house to kind of have their house grow. A lot of those things right now end up through a complicated process with the Zoning Board of Appeals. At the same time, if someone gets a larger lot in the neighborhood, in the past they might be able to put 8 or 10 or 12 units into a development project there. What we're doing is we're returning a lot of those neighborhood residential districts to an area where our expectation is that single, 2 and 3 family houses, much like the ones that are on the street today, are the ones that someone can build new in those neighborhoods. So for those neighborhoods, it conserves the residential character of the neighborhood that exists there today, while at the same time still being based upon our comprehensive plan for growth, allowing more development to happen in neighborhood squares and to happen in areas to transform, like Inner Belt or Boynton Yards near Union Square, where there's the capacity to do a whole lot more. So it's sort of guiding development in a more logical way based upon where our planning has said we should be going.
Okay, I also think that there are some, a little bit more aggressive approach towards creating or preserving affordable housing. Can you talk about that?
We have a segment in our zoning ordinance about inclusionary zoning, which says that anybody who builds new housing, right now more than 8 units of new housing, will have to put a certain percentage of units, typically it's 12.5%, as affordable to people of low or moderate income. There's certain percentages of income, there's rental restrictions on those units, and you usually do a lottery for them to get people who live or work in Somerville to be able to have access to those units. We are raising the percentages on those numbers. We're going to have them, what we're proposing to the Board of Aldermen is the most aggressive inclusionary housing ordinance in the entire state.
Really?
Areas around transit stations where you're doing larger, most significant development around transit, it goes as high as 20%, which is 1 in 5. So right now we're at 1 in 8. There are areas where it goes to 1 in 7 and 1 in 6 and 1 in 5, depending upon how big a building you're building and how close to either current or future transit that building's going to be.
Okay, that sounds good. And then what about promoting or helping to preserve locally owned small businesses?
When we went out and talked to people in the community about what their priorities were, there were really 2 significant things that concerned them when it came to new businesses coming into the neighborhood. One is what happens when the formula chain store comes in a place where we have a lot of small-scale independent businesses. And the other is what happens when you get a really big floor plate, big box type business. So what the new zoning does is it says if you're starting a small business in a neighborhood main street, we're trying to make that easy for you. We're trying to make it something the code allows. What we're doing then is when you have a formula chain store type business or a business over a certain size, those are the ones we're saying need to come into the Zoning Board of Appeals, have a community process, understand what the impacts of those are, and try to address those impacts. So we're trying to balance what we regulate with what the community most wants, making it easier to do what we want, and taking a pause and going through a review process for the things that the community wants more input into.
Okay, well, we're running out of time. Unfortunately, this is only a little introduction. I want to wrap up by just saying, how can people watching this interview get involved, learn more, participate, and maybe even add their 2 cents in before this is finalized by the Board of Aldermen?
Sure. The Board of Aldermen needs to vote to approve this ordinance. At the end of the day, they're starting their public hearing process. In preparation for that, we're doing a couple of things. We have created a zoning website, somervillema.gov/zoning, which introduces the code overhaul, has copies of it, has some brochures with information on it and our schedule going forward. We're also hosting a community information session at the Somerville Armory on Tuesday, January 20th at 6:30 p.m. And then the Board of Aldermen and the Planning Board will be holding a joint public hearing on it sometime in the forthcoming weeks. That will be, information about that will be on the website as soon as we have that date nailed down.
Well, that's great, George. Thanks a lot. And I guess I'll see you on January 20th at the Armory.
All right. Hope to see you and a whole bunch of others there.
Yeah,
Great.
everyone should come on down, learn more, and get involved.